The government lowers forecast for this year's economic growth. All nominations for district council election are valid. Vice Premier He Lifeng meets U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in San Francisco. Hello, welcome to TVB News. The government has lowered its forecast for the city's economic growth this year from between 4% and 5% to 3.2%. The government's economists said the decision was made as a result of a worsening external economic environment. Timothy Lee has our top story.
Hong Kong's GDP growth reached 4.1% year-on-year for the third quarter this year. But the SAR's economic challenges continue to persist, with exports of goods having decreased by 8.6%. Exports to the mainland, Europe, the US, and most Asian markets all recorded a drop. This as the export of services continues on an upward trend, reaching a growth of 23.9%, thanks to the influx of post-pandemic tourists. Consumer expenditure also rose by 6.3%. The government said it believes the external economic environment is likely to worsen due to high interest rates in Europe and the US. Meanwhile, government economist Adolf Leung said the city's economic growth for the rest of the year will be driven primarily by tourism and private consumption.
Inbound tourism and private consumption will continue to underpin economic growth for the rest of the year. Regards private consumption, continued improvement in household income and the government's various support initiatives, including Night Vibes Hong Kong, should provide support.
Regarding changes in prices, the government said the city could expect to see moderate inflation in the short term. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Secretary for Justice Paul Lam said Hong Kong courts can handle national security cases independently. The remarks came amid concerns over whether authorities might invoke Article 55 of the Hong Kong National Security Law to admit some cases to the mainland. That's after multiple U.S. politicians proposed to sanction 49 SAR officials and judges. The Justice Chief stressed only under 3 extreme circumstances would Article 55 be activated. They include when it involved complex cases due to involvement of a foreign country. On the national security cases of media mogul Jimmy Lai, Lam said he's 100% confident that Hong Kong courts will be able to handle it. On the joint petition from 10 overseas Catholic clerics to ask for Lai's release, Lam said that's an interference in the city's judicial independence and is against the rule of law. This year's Hong Kong Legal Week drew to a close today. Liu Guangyuan, Deputy Director of Beijing's Liaison Office in Hong Kong, criticized some American politicians for calls to sanction SAR officials and judges, saying any actions against the rule of law in Hong Kong will not succeed. Chief Executive John Lee explained the advantages of the city's basic law. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Under the theme Onward and Forward, Connecting the World, this year's Hong Kong Legal Week concluded today. The 4-day event attracted about 11,000 participants, including some online. Chief Executive John Lee said Hong Kong's basic law ensures the long-term prosperity in the SAR, adding the city should use its special judicial system and serve as a bridge between the mainland and the rest of the world.
Thanks to the rule of law and our sound legal system, Hong Kong has long been recognized as one of the world's freest economies. We must all work together to educate our youth and bring up our next generation to become law-abiding citizens with global perspectives, as well as a sense of affection for our country and our Hong Kong home.
Regarding the call by some U.S. lawmakers to sanction SAR judges, Liu Guangyuan, Deputy Director of Beijing's Liaison Office in Hong Kong, criticized their actions as illegal under international law.
Such a despicable move is brazenly violating the principle of international law and the spirit of the rule of law. It's nothing short of ridiculous, shameless. Facts have proved time and again that intimidation cannot suppress the rule of law in Hong Kong. Any attempts to disrupt the rule of law in Hong Kong and undermine the one country, two systems principle are doomed to fail.
Timothy Lee, TVB News.
All 399 candidates' nominations for the 2023 District Council ordinary election are deemed valid. The District Council polls have been scheduled for November 10th. The candidates were vetted by the District Council Eligibility Review Committee, chaired by Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan. The 399 hopefuls were said to have met the legal requirements and conditions for upholding the Basic Law and bearing allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR. The committee published their names, addresses, and candidate numbers in the Gazette today. Secretary for Development Bernadette Lin said the government remains committed in the efforts to boost Hong Kong's land supply. This after the city witnessed consecutive failed land tenders recently. The remarks were made in her first duty visit to Beijing. She said developers have become more prudent and conservative in their tendering amid the complex geopolitical situations and uncertain external economic environment. During her trip, Lin visited the National Development and Reform Commission and the Ministry of Water Resources, and as well as the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development. She also met Xia Baolong, director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. Lin quoted Xia as saying that the central government approved of and support the work of the SAR government. Vice Premier He Lifeng began 2 days of talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in San Francisco on Thursday. This in a bid to limit the economic fallout from tensions between Washington and Beijing, while keeping lines of communication open on topics ranging from national security to climate change. The dialogue comes with President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden could meet on the sidelines of an Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco next week. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Vice Premier He Lifeng's talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen are designed to help lay the groundwork for a possible meeting between President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden next week on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco. This would be their first engagement in nearly a year. He Lifeng said his engagements with Yellen so far have been constructive. However, he added that the two sides needed to bring their relationship back to a healthy and stable development. That includes improving the investment and business environment and taking effective measures to bring US-China economic and trade relations back on track. This in reference to long-standing Chinese objections to US tariffs on its exports and restrictions on US investment in China. Yellen told the Vice Premier that the US has no desire to decouple from China and that Washington seeks a healthy economic relationship with Beijing, adding she would discuss and explain the reasons behind continued US national security restrictions.
The United States has no desire to decouple from China. A full separation of our economies would be economically disastrous for both of our countries and for the world. We seek a healthy economic relationship with China that benefits both countries over time.
Yellen also said she looked forward to discussing collaboration on global challenges ranging from climate change to debt distress in low-income countries. Daniel Rao, TV News.
Still ahead. Israel allows daily 4-hour pause in military operation in Gaza. TVB News visits Indonesia to report on plans to move its capital from Jakarta. Welcome back. Following widespread calls for a humanitarian ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Hamas, a small window has finally been opened. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be short pauses for a few hours here and there, but he also vowed the fight against Hamas in Gaza goes on. David Garrett reports.
As the sun rose on Gaza, the bombs continue to rain down. Israel's offensive to root out Hamas does continue, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel have committed to short humanitarian pauses. Hundreds of dissenting voices were clear to hear and see in New York. There were loud calls around the city's public library, shouts of "Free, Free Palestine." Speakers on the street included actress and activist Susan Sarandon.
So many people do not understand the context in which this October 7th assault happened. They don't understand the history of what has been happening to the Palestinian people for 75 years.
Concern grows about the Israeli bombardment around the Al-Shifa hospital. For the second day running, there was a blast in the vicinity, sending people scurrying for cover. The Hamas-run health ministry claims Israel wants to put health facilities out of commission. David Garrett, TVB News.
Suella Braverman, the UK Home Secretary, could be dismissed after accusing police officers of being biased in their policing of demonstrations. In a Times newspaper article, Braverman wrote the police are going easy on pro-Palestinians who she said were taking part in hate marches. The government led by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak say Braverman's article was not approved by Downing Street. London has seen some of the biggest demonstrations since the Israel-Hamas war began. Another large crowd is expected on Saturday, which is the anniversary of the end of World War I. The Met Police say there is no serious threat and will allow the rally to go ahead.
The law provides no mechanism to ban a gathering, a static protest, a rally, anything like that. There's no mechanism whatsoever to ban such a thing. And if the organisers want that, then it will happen.
He has said that he can ensure that he safeguards remembrance for the country this weekend, as well as keep the public safe. Now, my job is to hold him accountable for that.
And many cities across the world are hounded by the woes of overpopulation, traffic congestion, and pollution. Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, is no exception. And home to some 10 million people, Jakarta is one of the fastest sinking cities in the world. That's owing to land subsidence from the overpumping of underground water as well as rising sea levels. In the third part of our Connecting Indonesia series, we explore how important the capital relocation is in solving these issues and whether the country is ready for the major move. Like many big cities, Jakarta has some problems. It's overcrowded, its air polluted, and it's sinking.
Jakarta also, when raining, is flooded very bad, sinking. So for me, it's better to have a new place, new development also.
Jakarta is very crowded and then traffic is very bad.
Northern Jakarta has fallen 2.5 meters in 10 years and is sinking at an alarming rate. To address a series of challenges, the government has reclaimed the northern coast of Jakarta, including a new island called Pik, which comes with this Chinatown. And Indonesia is planning to move its capital away from Jakarta.
Unless we can do something about it, this is a city that is, soon to be uninhabitable.
Charles Honoris, a member of the Indonesian House of Representatives, said to tackle Jakarta's problems, all elements in the country are of one mind to support the capital relocation efforts. That's to Nusantara, a sparsely populated location deep within the jungle of East Kalimantan province around the center of Indonesia. The project to move the capital from Jakarta to Nusantara has less than 1 year until its inauguration date. Is Nusantara ready in terms of its infrastructure, logistics, and major demographic changes?
The president has made it clear that the project is a priority.
But with the presidential election expected in February, will major candidates carry on with Joko Widodo's plan?
The popularity and the approval rating of the president is currently at 70 to 80%. So meaning what? 70 to 80% of the population likes what he has been doing all this time. It will not be a smart move by whoever becomes the next president not to continue what has been done all this time.
Professor Brian Wong, a fellow at the University of Hong Kong's Center on Contemporary China and the World, said the move of capital also symbolizes Indonesia's desire to have more equal development across the archipelago.
Historically, economic development has been largely concentrated and bunched up around the Jakarta area, whereas, in all honesty, a core part and pillar of Nusantara project is to spread the love a little, onto the other islands within Indonesia, including Java. And furthermore, the issues of inefficient town planning and also urban planning. These are all bottlenecks that, with the capital relocation project, the Indonesian government is hoping to redress properly for once and for all.
10, 15 years ago, when we look at Beijing, one of the most polluted city in the world. But then in a matter of years, Beijing have successfully transformed its capital into a more green environment, and investment from Chinese companies will go hand in hand in our purpose to make the new capital city into an environmentally friendly city or a green city.
Charles Honors also told us foreign investment from other countries and overseas corporations is welcomed in developing the new capital, Nusantara, and they include China as well as Hong Kong. Indonesia unveiled the largest solar power plant in Southeast Asia. The massive facility built by a Chinese company is above a reservoir in West Java. The $145 million project used state funds with United Arab Emirates investment. The plant was built by the Power China Huadong Engineering Corporation. There are more than 340,000 solar panels. It can produce 300 million kilowatts of energy each year. Indonesia targets net zero emissions by 2060. In a potential blow to the Democrats, which hold a wafer-thin majority in the Senate, long-serving Senator Joe Manchin announced he won't run for another term. This report from NBC News.
Tonight, a disappointment for Democrats. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin delivering a surprise announcement that he will not seek re-election next year.
I believe in my heart of hearts that I've accomplished what I set out to do for West Virginia.
His decision boosts Republicans' hopes of regaining control of the Senate, where Democrats currently cling to a two-seat majority. Manchin was facing an uphill battle in a state that former President Trump won by nearly 40 points. It's another 2024 challenge for President Biden tonight in Illinois, decked out in union gear.
I've worn this shirt a lot, man.
Celebrating the planned reopening of a Stellantis auto plant that closed in March.
These deals are game changers. Not only for UAW workers, but for all workers in America.
After a months-long strike, the president touting his support for the historic UAW labor deal that earned workers at the big three automakers a 25% pay raise. This plant agreeing to bring back 1,200 workers and hiring another 1,000. Many union workers giving the president credit.
I voted for him. I love him. I hope he gets reelected.
But not everyone's convinced, with Americans now paying $734 a month more than they paid for the same goods and services 2 years ago.
Economically, he has not done enough. Economically, we are doing horrible. If everybody pays attention to the cost of food, gas, everything.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.